What do you think she does for a living? Or her? Or her? If you guessed climbs inside a cage and punches people in the face repeatedly, you'd be correct. But that's not something women are supposed to do, right? They're supposed to be like this, on the outside looking pretty, not actually going out there and trying to hurt each other. That's a man thing, right? Well, perhaps not. And perhaps this can be better explained through the application of gender roles and their place in mixed martial arts. Now, before we can get into the topic of gender role, we first have to define what gender is. If you said male and female are genders, you would be incorrect. Male and female are sexes, a biological term for dividing men and women. Gender, on the other hand, is a sociological construct which encompasses the feelings, attitudes, and behaviors associated with being male or female. Think of it like this. Having man parts or lady parts falls under the concept of sex. Having a blue room for a boy and a pink room for a girl fall under gender. Understand? Great.
So now that we have a definition of gender, how does it relate to two consenting adults climbing into a cage on Saturday night and punching, kicking, and choking each other until one wins? First, let's talk about gender roles. Gender roles are all those behaviors that match widely shared expectations about how males and females are supposed to act. In the case of mixed martial arts, it's supposed to be men going out into aggressive battle, proving themselves against other men for glory. When women step into the cage, it goes against the passive and nurturing stereotypes associated with playing a woman. Women are supposed to be concerned with their appearance, and getting into a fight where physical damage is highly likely, it goes against the gender role socially created for women. This leads to double standards. Now before we go on, let's define double standards so everyone can be on board with what we're talking about. Double standards occur when the same activity gets two radically different reactions based on who or what is involved. In this case, it's men or women fighting.
Let's talk about double standards, and take a moment to mention Ronda Rousey. For those of you who do not know, this is Ronda Rousey. She's a former Olympic bronze medalist in judo, current UFC Women's Bantamweight champion, and can break your arm faster than you can tap out. Now, while she was originally portrayed as a rather wholesome, after coaching The Ultimate Fighter, things changed. Now she was aggressive and rude, and acting very similarly to two other UFC fighters, Nick and Nate Diaz, whose foul language and almost constant middle fingers are celebrated by fans. But when Ronda started to act that way, people thought she was acting like a brat. But why is this acceptable for the Diaz brothers to disrespect their opponents and not Ronda? Because of double standards. Masculinity is judged much more on power and status over appearance, so men get away with more offensive behaviors because it doesn't hurt their image. Femininity, on the other hand, is judged on things like appearance and daintiness, and when this norm is broken, the public responds negatively, because that's just not how a woman is supposed to act. Never mind that her job is to beat people up professionally, she also has to mind her manners because she's a lady.
If you go into Google and type in Ronda Rousey or Miesha Tate, or most other female mixed martial artists, one of the top search results is HOT, hot. This is not shared by their male counterparts, and looking into how fighters are represented in the media. It is clear to see why. When male mixed martial artists are shown outside of fighting, they are usually doing one of two things. They are in expensive clothes, showing a powerful lifestyle, or they are in advertisements for products associated with their sport. The women of MMA, on the other hand, are photographed in a highly sexualized manner. Ronda Rousey has been the focus of Maxim magazine, and when Miesha Tate was in Fight Mag, a male-dominant mixed martial arts magazine, she was shown as not as another fighter, but more as a model, even though she's been an MMA champion. However, sexualized media portrayals are not limited to women. Fighters like Georges St. Pierre and Alistair Overeem are widely photographed for their physiques, while others like Anderson Silva, or going real far, Royal Nielsen, are not. This is because stereotypical media portrayals are not just limited to female fighters. Their male counterparts are almost always shown in an aggressive or dominating manner. This might seem to be expected, but in doing so, the male mixed martial artist is reduced to nothing more than a grunting caveman who likes to punch things, lift weights, and sleep. In reality, these athletes are highly disciplined, and many of the top fighters come from a college wrestling background and have at least an undergraduate degree. For example, Shane Carwin, a former heavyweight title challenger, is a working engineer, and former UFC light heavyweight champion Chuck Liddell has a degree in accounting. But even with their post-secondary education degrees, both Liddell and Carwin are promoted as a stereotypical brute with no intellectual ability because they are male fighters.
Now, what we've just discussed in regards to sociologically created gender roles, from double standards to media representations, all point toward a social constructionism theory of gender. This describes gender differences as not inherently biological, but as products of social structure and culture. This means that the traditional roles of men and women have been historically constructed and are not biologically innate. What makes MMA an interesting example is that it reaffirms those socially constructed roles for men while going against and even challenging the equivalent roles for women. By assessing gender in this way, it makes sense why a woman can succeed in MMA, because it's not about what she's born with, but rather what she decides to do. However, because the socially constructed roles are so ingrained in the culture, she will have to work much harder to get the same level of recognition.